in December last year. Thanks everyone for making the time to be here. I know you've all worked hard today and we do appreciate your time and efforts. So I'm going to introduce the first speaker to start us off. His name is Jack Callow. He's a safety manager on the TNR3 for Acciona. He is going to be discussing some safety issues on the TNR3 project. And I know that everyone is not currently on the TNR3, but I'm sure that a lot of the issues that Jack will be discussing today will relate to all our projects that we're currently working on. So I will introduce Jack first, and thanks everyone again, and our special guests also for attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so, as Tracy says, my name is Jack Callow. I put a photo up there because I thought we might be wearing masks and you wouldn't know what I look like. But now I don't need to put that photo up there because you can see what I look like. Hopefully I've met most of you that you've worked on the TNR3 project. Those that have gone through the induction, I've probably met a lot of you. So, before I start, I ask myself the question, why is safety so important to me? And for me personally, it's about my family. I want to make sure that every day I go home safely so that I can spend time with my family. My question to you is, why is safety important to you? And I want you guys to think about this throughout the presentation tonight, because at the end of the day, it's you guys going home safely to whatever it is that you go home for, whether it's your family, your pets, a farm, maybe your sport, motorbike riding, fishing with your kids, or out boating. We all have a reason to go home safely, and that reason is often bigger than us. We as human beings can be self-sacrificial. We're quite happy to bow off a hand and it's a bit of a hero badge. But how does that impact on your family? How does it impact on your children? And if you get into at work, how does it change the dynamics of the home where you live? So, the topic for tonight is safety issues on site at TNR3. To be able to answer that, I have to ask myself, what are the actual activities that are being performed by Malgo on TNR3? There are a number of them. So, we've got a whole lot of excavators there. We've got earth moving, graders, rollers, you name it. We've got the bulk of the stuff is earth moving. So we've got bogies, we've got trucks and dogs. And then of course we've got the young lads who come and refuel it. All of that stuff is a very, very high risk activity. All of that stuff has the potential to kill us. So I'm just going to talk about two aspects tonight. Basically, reversing and mechanical freestands. Because if we can eliminate those and get those right, straight away we've probably got rid of 80% of our risk profile. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Now just to give you some statistics, there's some statistics up on the board there you can read. In the past 2 years, just in the Acciona Lend-Lease business, there have been over 800 moving plant incidents. 800. That's equivalent to 1.5 incidents per day. So every single day, we're getting 1.5 plant incidents. There's also been about 8,000 identified at-risk observations. So I'm sure those of you who worked at North Connect or TNR3, you see the guys go out there, we do observations, we take notes, we take photos, and we have a look at how are we operating, are we doing things safely. And we discovered there are at least 8,000 at-risk observations that we've observed out in the site. 20% of those fall into the critical incidents. 20% of all critical incidents involve reversing. And of that, 75% of all reversing incidents have identified pedestrians and vehicle segregation as a contributing factor. And it is for that reason that we've got a reduced reversing campaign that was introduced originally by Lend-Lease and carried on with Acciona. I'm just going to show you a video. A lot of you may have seen this video. It was a video that was put together by Lend-Lease, and it's just describing why we don't want to reverse it.
It's a no-brainer. The walkways are there to keep us safe. They keep us out of harm's way. People still walk through them.
frightened the hell out of me actually. So it scared me a lot. The shock of hearing, stop. You just freeze up, just stop as quick as you can, and you're just like, oh my God, what have I done? And then it is an easy thing, especially in these in any bit of plant.
The reaction, the way the news was broken through was a shit moment, if you like. Your heart just sunk, Think, how? Without even knowing or seeing anything further.
You might only move 5 metres without paying full attention, but that might be enough to bump into someone or something. It's not all the onus isn't on the drivers of the vehicle. Pedestrians need to be aware of what they're doing as well.
It's easy for your concentration to just lapse for a second, and for something to happen in that split second, you should just always be more aware.
Make sure you know where you're going. Always ask questions. Use the two-way radio. You've got traffic controller here to help you and guide you wherever you need to go.
Something changes. We need to stop, replan, and re-execute. But again, we all are busy. We are in a hurry. We just need to take a breath, and if we're moving forward straight away, we're less likely to bump into anyone.
Yeah, if we minimise those interactions with people, we minimise the potential for harm to our workforce. So it's really simple. So where we don't need to reverse, don't reverse.
So, as Graham says there, when you don't need to reverse, don't reverse. As soon as you eliminate reversing, you just eliminate a whole bunch of hazards. And why do we say we want to reduce reversing where possible? Because it's obvious. When you're driving forward, you've got 180 degrees field of vision. You can see everything in front of you. You're driving along, you can see it. The moment you put it into reverse, you introduce a whole lot of blind spots. And in those blind spots could quite easily be a person standing. Now, I was chatting to a couple of the Mulgara guys after the weekly toolbox yesterday or the day before, and they were talking about some of the close incidences that they've had with people or light vehicles just parking up behind the bogey, not letting them know they're there. They're so close behind the bogey, they don't see it. The guy puts it into reverse. There's always a lag period, 2-3 seconds before the camera comes on. During that time, you've got back 2 meters, bam. If you're lucky, it's a light vehicle. Hopefully not a pedestrian. So, there's 2 things that we need to do. We need, if you have to reverse, try and eliminate reversing. But if you can't eliminate it and you have to reverse, you must have a plan. And the plan can be quite simple. Have you got a spotter? Somebody who can guide you back so that you know that it's quite safe to reverse. Or have you got an exclusion zone? It doesn't have to be massive, elaborate plan, but just make sure when you put that thing into reverse, you do have a plan so that when you go back, you're not going to hit somebody. And it really comes down to these 2 basic steps, okay? Stop and think, and set your sight up properly. And we talk about it all the time at TNR3, planning, preparation, set up your sight properly. And if you do that, hopefully you won't have any incidents. Now, we've just had an audit last week, and one of the big findings from that audit was audible alarms. So any vehicle that's reversing must have an audible alarm. And we discovered that a lot of the audible alarms were not loud enough. So, tick the box, yes, it's got an audible alarm, but it wasn't actually loud enough. And there were blind spots, or deaf spots, where the alarm wasn't as loud as it needed to be. So if there had been a pedestrian in that area, they probably wouldn't have heard it. So one of the big things that we can do to eliminate any reversing incidents, plan the reversing and make sure that you've got an audible alarm. The other thing that I want to talk about is quite simply just the vehicle or the plant daily pre-check. If you guys do that and you check your plant, you will be able to identify things that are wrong and have them fixed. We all do a form of a vehicle pre-check every time we get in the car, subconsciously. We put on our seatbelts. We look in the mirrors. We're already doing that. What we're saying is just take it another step. Let's have a complete and thorough examination of the plant and equipment to make sure that it is safe, that it is roadworthy, and it's not going to collapse and break on you. And it's not a tick and flick operation. Signing that pre-start is a legal document. Once you put your signature on there, it becomes a legal document. So if you've inspected your vehicle or your plant or your buggy, whatever it is you've got, and you find things that are wrong with it, you must write them down and then you sign it. And you let Daniel or his team know, and they'll get it fixed. But what we don't want to see is when we have something go wrong, and we go along and we say, well, you know, were you aware that this wasn't working? And you say, yeah, no, I knew that, but I didn't write it down. Well, then you don't have a leg to stand on. But if you did write it down and you get it fixed, hopefully we aren't going to end up with any of these problems. I've got an old saying that I use all the time. If it doesn't look right, it probably isn't right. So when you do your inspection, and you walk around your vehicle and you have a look at it, if it doesn't look right, it probably isn't right. Do something about it. We can eliminate so many potential incidents before they happen if we do these things thoroughly. When you get into the vehicle, once you've done your pre-check, just do a 360 around the vehicle. It'll only take you a few seconds. Walk around the vehicle, look underneath the vehicle, look behind the vehicle. What's behind you? What's in front of you? What's to the side of you? And if we do that, whether it's a buggy or an excavator, if we do that and it becomes a habit, straight away you've eliminated the possibility of something that you didn't know that was there. So, leading up to Christmas, we had this campaign running, but as you probably all know, we're very close towards the end of the TNR3 project. And we've decided to keep the campaign going, and we're calling it the road to completion. The steps we need to get to the finish line, the goals we need to get to the finish line. And what we found is every time we've had an incident, doesn't matter how big or small the incident is, what we've discovered is it always somehow relates back to one of these 5 things. So we need to say ownership. Who owns the area where we're going? Have you reported to them? Do they know you're there? We've had incidents where people are working on site, where they come on site, and we don't know they're there. Planning. Do I know the plan? Have you made a plan? You're going to reverse. Have you made a plan? Have you got a spotter? Documentation. Have you done your pre-start? Have you signed on to the forms that you need to sign on? PPE and housekeeping. People underrate housekeeping. They're really, really important. And then finally, site setup. And that's what we talked about earlier. Let's make sure that we set the site up so that it doesn't fail. We set it up properly, we set up to succeed. Okay? So, have you reported to your supervisor when you arrive at TNR3? Does he know you're there? Huh? Has my supervisor approved the work you're going to do? So you've arrived on site, you let him know you're there, you're going to do something, has he approved that? Okay? And then have you signed on to the appropriate documentation? That's all really important stuff. So we get that right, we've eliminated the reversing, or we've reduced the reversing, we've done our pre-checks on the vehicles, we know that we're safe, we know we can go forward with confidence. I'm just going to play another video quickly.
Safety is a reward to get land.
You take ownership for work.
Land directly to the right end.
Be vigilant with documentation.
Be wise and let it direct PPE.
Set up your site correct. Taking time to get that right. Will ensure you and your workmates
Are safe and get to go home to their loved ones.
Okay, that's all I've got for you. But I'm going to go back to where I started. What's your reason for going home safely at the end of the day? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. And interesting fact is that it is actually Jack's 60th birthday today. his obvious wish was to come and join us on our subcontractor forum for his birthday. So everyone just give him a big round of applause. Everyone sing happy birthday. And thank you very much for that talk, Jack. While our next speaker, Julian, is just setting up, I just wanted to follow on from what Jack was saying about the pre-starts. So obviously, if you're operating plant, we do have the pre-start plant books that are available in the shed here, so please let us know if you do need them. And with the bogey tippers and the truck and dogs and the PDS trucks, we have obviously your green folders that have your sign on every day, your daily vehicle plan checks. Now, quite regularly we are chasing those up from you guys, but they are an important document because when you're signing that you've driven your truck for the day, you are signing that you have done a pre-start check on that truck. So please take those seriously and make sure that you are doing the right things by them, signing them when you have driven the truck, not when you haven't been, just signing them willy-nilly. Make sure you are signing them when you are actually driving the truck, and therefore we can all make sure we are doing our pre-starts like Jack mentioned in his talk. So thanks again, Jack, that was very good. So Julian Tesh is from the Transport for New South Wales. He's the Acting Industry Liaison Officer, and he is going to be talking to us about chain of responsibility. So we'll just give Julian a few minutes just to set up. And yeah, just remember what we're talking about in these forums. Make sure you're taking it all seriously, and it's not just an event just to come out of who we are, talking about a lot of important safety issues. And if there's anything you do want to discuss after these forums, you know that we're always here to discuss them with you. So don't ever hesitate to bring up any issues that you feel are important. While Julian is setting up, are you ready to go, Julian?
Just fine-tuning this a little bit.
That's fine.
A few issues here.
Actually, what I might do is, while Julian is setting up too, I might talk about a few things that I was going to talk about after. That I wanted to just remind people too that about a week or so ago, Cynthia forwarded a message that was from the TNR56 project about some important issues that was happening on that job. One of them was that it's important to make sure that you are attending the pre-starts that are held there and you actually are on time. The other issues that were brought up was operators on machines, that they should be filling out task cards on site. And there were also issues brought up about safe work method statements and traffic management plans on the job. So please make sure that you take our messaging that we do forward from these projects very seriously. And again, if you have any questions about anything, you know you can come to us and ask for assistance. I also wanted to take time while the guys are just setting up to thank everyone again for being here, but to also thank everyone who helped set up today. Last time we had our forum, I forgot to thank Cynthia in particular because she does a lot of work organising these nights. So just like to give her a little round of applause for her efforts for organising the evening. Thanks, Cynthia. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Julian and we'll watch yours talk.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Cynthia, and thanks, Daniel, for the opportunity to come on tonight and have a chat to you about chain of responsibility. My name's Julian Tesh. I'm currently acting in a role as a field industry liaison officer. I've only been in the role for a couple of months. My background is 6.5 years as a compliance inspector. I work in the southern New South Wales region. So it's an opportunity for me to jump up a little. So what we wanted to cover here tonight with you is we want to go through chain of responsibility. Chain of responsibility involves the heavy vehicle national law. So since 2018, the National Heavy Vehicle Law has introduced quite a lot of changes in the chain of responsibility area. So what we'll do is we'll run through the presentation. Technical issue. Thank you. There we go. Rightio, we're off. Okay, so definition of a heavy vehicle firstly. Heavy vehicle is a vehicle with a GBM over 4.5 tonne. So by definition, that vehicle then fits under the heavy vehicle national law. So since 2018, the NHVL, heavy vehicle national law, has introduced some significant changes. So everybody in the road transport chain and everybody connected with the operation of transport now is tied in some way, shape or form. What that means is it's not just the driver anymore or the operator of the vehicle, it also is connecting people in the chain as far as the loading, the consigning, the receiver of the load, the unloaders. So all those people form part of that chain. Okay, so all these aspects of understanding chain of responsibility, speeding, fatigue, loading, mass, dimension and maintenance, all fall under part of chain of responsibility and the ability to manage those areas in your operation. So there's a listing right there of the parties that are involved in the chain. So anyone from the prime contractor, like we've just heard from Jack and Asiana, they're a contractor. Employers, so as in the company that you're employed by, Mulgara Excavations. Operators, consigners, loading managers, unloaders, packers and so on. All have a different part to play and all contribute now to that chain. This is a little bit of a breakdown here of responsibilities of what the driver needs to encounter in complying with that chain of responsibility law. So work and rest requirements of the fatigue law need to be covered. Keeping an accurate work diary and records, okay, on a consistent basis. Responding to changes in circumstances. So if you've got delays on the work site, it's communicating those back to your supervisor or back to your employer. Maybe there's some alterations that can be made to trip times and things like that. Ensuring a vehicle doesn't exceed mass or dimension limits. Okay, that becomes the job of those people in that party as well. The loader, the driver, everybody who's performing the task. Ensuring your load is properly restrained. Checking and reporting on maintenance. So on a daily check basis, as Jack has highlighted to you, reporting that back into your management. Obeying all speed limits and road rules at all times. And subcontractors who are working for a contractor also need to fall in line and comply with those obligations as well. And identifying and reporting hazards and risks associated with the transport task. So if you see something that's out of place or not right or is a risk, as Jack's highlighted, that needs to be reported. We have a list here of operator, manager and scheduler responsibilities. Alright, ensuring that rosters and schedules do not require the drivers to breach driving hours and speed limits. Assessing whether the driver is fit for duty. Now that's a big one. And we're seeing more and more insurance companies now, tied to transport operators, who are taking a closer eye and more interest in the fitness of the driver. If the driver has conditions on a licence, then they need to be considered in that person in the role. Recording drivers' activities, work and rest times, ensuring drivers do not work while they're impaired by fatigue. Now, working locally, working within 100 kilometres from your base, there's not a requirement to carry and complete a work diary, but you still need to comply with the fatigue law. And it is an offence to drive a heavy vehicle whilst fatigued. So fatigue can come in different forms. It's not just plain and simply just work and rest and the lack of rest. It can be other emotional circumstances, could be things in the background that are affecting that driver's fatigue and could play a part in that as well. Maintaining a vehicle, ensuring it's got a functioning speed limiter, and that is a bit of an issue in some areas. Ensuring vehicles are not loaded to exceed mass or dimension limits. And Cynthia's asked me to speak to you at the end of this slideshow, just point out a few things on mass limits, which I'll do. Ensuring drivers moving freight containers got container weight declarations, which isn't you guys, and then consulting with other parties in the supply chain. Once again, it's all about networking and keeping that communication happening. It all comes down to having a safety management system. So, being employed by Mulgoa Excavations, part of the requirement under the law is that there's some form and some shape of safety management system in place. Okay, so an ongoing management of those different areas form your safety management system. So your safety policy and documentation. So what the company's rules are around operating and plant equipment. Promoting that safety, a bit like what we're doing here tonight. We're trying to promote safety to the forefront. And safety assurance. So processes to go back, audit and have a look at and review where there's shortcomings. And then safety risk management, which is more the day-to-day. Alright, so with those changes that came in the Heavy Vehicle National Law in October 2018, the law used to say reasonable steps defence would apply. So what that meant was, if you've taken reasonable steps, you had a reasonable argument, that might stand up in court. Law's now been changed. What is reasonably practicable? So the law looks at what is reasonable and what is practicable about that activity, about the maintenance on that vehicle, about managing driver fatigue, about loading of vehicles, load restraint, things like that. So all of these aspects now, you have to look through a set of eyes and view it from whatever could be considered reasonably practicable. Okay, so the new amendments came in October 2018. Something that is, or was at the time, reasonably able to be done to ensure health and safety while taking into account and weighing up all the relevant matters. Okay, the likelihood of the risk occurring, the degree of harm, what the person knows about the risk, and ways to remove or reduce the risk, whether they are feasible. So, chain of responsibility really is about work health safety, but it's put across the transport operation now. So the primary duty and legal obligation under chain of responsibility is that each party in the chain of responsibility for a heavy vehicle must ensure, as far as reasonably practical, the safety of the parties, transport activities relating to the vehicle, without limiting subsection 1. Each party must, so far as reasonably practical, eliminate public risks to the extent that it is not reasonably practical to eliminate. Minimise risks, in other words, to yourself and to the public. We're talking about when we're on road activity, where we're working with the public, not just on the work site. Ensure the party's conduct does not directly or indirectly cause or encourage the driver or other party in the supply chain to break any road transport laws. So we're talking about speeding to get to the tip side. Get the load off, get back to get the next load. At any point in time when you're doing that activity, you're in breach of the law. Executive officers within the organisation, so the owners and managers, okay, they have legal obligation as well to keep and acquire up-to-date knowledge about safe conduct of transport activities and gain an understanding of what's required from a legal standpoint. They're also expected to acquire and keep up to date knowledge about safe conduct of transport activities and gain an understanding of the legal entities' hazard risks and manage that. Alright, so the law actually moves on and then talks about due diligence. So, and it quotes there section 26 of the Heavy Vehicle National Law. So as an executive, of a legal entity, they must exercise due diligence to ensure that the legal entity complies with that duty. So in other words, people who are in a position have to exercise their duty to make sure people are seen to comply as much as possible with the law. So the executive may be convicted of an offence against subsection 1, even if the legal entity has not been proceeded against, or convicted of an offence relating to chain responsibility under the heavy vehicle national law. Bit of a cut and dried topic, I guess, because we're quoting and we're talking about excepts of the law and the importance of it. When there is an incident involving chain responsibility in those laws, what happens is it gets categorised. And depending upon what category it is, depends on potential ramifications and penalties that could be imposed as a result of that. So category 1 would be the worst case scenario. There might have been a death or serious injury as a result of an accident, and that can be proven in court. That might be the typical maximum penalty. So it's 300 for an individual, 300,000, and or 5 years imprisonment, or both. And for a corporation, could be up to a maximum of $3 million. So part of the rewrite of this part of the law, the heavy vehicle national law, saw these penalties increase significantly. Category 2, okay, up to 150,000 for the individual or 1.5 million for the corporation. And a category 3 offence, still serious, up to 50,000 for the individual or up to 500,000 for the organisation. So there's significant penalties, and they're in line with work health safety. Determination on that is a result of investigations. Investigations into an incident, which then put the matter before the court. And particularly if there's someone seriously injured or killed, more in the case of being killed, it then goes before the coroner's court. Okay, so understanding your legal obligation is part of it. Okay, then providing the resources, so the organisation developing the resources and the information, training their staff, making them aware of that and what's required to comply, and then basically complying and getting that verified through the audit process. So that picture there just shows the road network map, and the point of that is just to highlight that everybody is connected in that transport chain. So everybody from the vehicle movement, from either side of that vehicle movement, from the loading, the consigner, right through to the receiving agent or the consignee. Everybody forms part of that chain. Right, that was the PowerPoint that I wanted to run through. I've just now got some pictorial information here I wanted to talk about with load restraint. Mass. Vehicle mass. Just give me a second. Touch on mass limits. Obviously this relates to obviously the drivers and combinations. It relates to the loaders, the excavator drivers and so on. So that diagram there, just want to highlight what your typical axle limits are. Alright? So prescriptive combinations are basically different types of vehicle combination. So if we focus on the bottom line there, we can see on the left-hand side at the bottom, we can see what we call a 6-axle truck and dog, 19 metres maximum length. So right up the back there, you're probably not going to see what your allowable axle limits are there. But on a bogie group, 16.5 tonne is your legal max. On your single steer axle on your dog trailer is 9 tonne. Your drive group 16.5 and 6 tonne on your steer. Now some vehicles have an allowance there where they can get 6.5 tonne on that steer axle without a problem by build. So that's typically their, what we call general mass limits. Vehicle of that type there, 42.5 tonne gross weight. So part of getting an understanding of what vehicles allow what. Vehicles like what we've got on the right hand side here, a truck and 4-axle dog trailer working under what we call the truck and dog notice, class 3 truck and dog notice. It's a specific mass exemption notice, and it'll allow us to have 16.5 tonne on each of those bogey axle groups, and 6 or 6.5 tonne if there's capability there on the steer axle group. Alright, so on a quad dog, we can load up, general mass limits, we can, under that notice, we can load up to 50 or 50.5 if it's got a 6.5 tonne front axle. Alright, so that's under what we call general mass limits. If we just scroll down, I can show you now what we call PBS. And PBS is in a little bit of a world of its own. Okay. The one in the middle there is a 3-axle truck and quad-axle trailer under PBS. And depending upon whether in most cases being PBS, you've normally got to be in a mass management scheme, the National Heavy Vehicle Accreditation Scheme in the mass module. Alright? Normally part of that requirement to be in PBS2 in most cases is that you're signed up for the maintenance module of the accreditation as well. So there's different limits there that are given under a PBS approval. So something that's categorised as a PBS vehicle actually has a specific approval document. And that approval document is something that has to be carried in the vehicle. Alright, if you're stopped for a compliance check roadside, that compliance document, that approval document is what we're looking to see. And by opening up and having a look at that document, we can see then the listed VIN numbers. If it's a fleet, there might be multiple trucks, there might be multiple trailers. We're cross-checking and cross-referencing those vehicles by VIN number to make sure they're on the approval. Because under PBS, we're working at much higher performance standards, so we're getting much more mass. So to be a part of that scheme, we've got to make sure that the vehicle is complying with it and is part of it. So part of getting PBS approval in the first place, it's a process that has to be followed and go through with the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. There's an engineering document basically that's reviewed, and they've shortened that process up a lot now because there's multiples of the same style of vehicle available. You can apply through the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, through a PBS assessor for a particular vehicle type, and it might be a truck manufacturer or a trailer manufacturer that can access you that. You can then join the scheme. There's some fees and things to be part of that. And on an ongoing basis, you need to be able to make sure that you're complying and having that approval document with you. Alright, so under that scheme there it lists several different weight categories. So general mass limits is what its entitlement is, okay, for general mass, possibly in a general access situation. So we're not on a specific route, we're just general access. That will depend upon its length, and it will depend upon that approval document. Once again, that approval document that is part of PBS is so important because normally in there it highlights any conditions about the operation of that vehicle. It also highlights things, sometimes quite specifically, down to tyres and other things which are factors that have to be maintained on that vehicle. So the requirement there has to be met and on an ongoing basis has to be complied with. So typically on a quad axle dog like that, on a 3-axle truck, up to 57, or with a steer axle allowance, 57.5 tonne gross weight, which is a substantial lift from your 50.5. But the moment you access the general network, so you're not on a dedicated route to work with that PBS mass, you then have to go back, or you need to be working at general mass limits. Alright, I just want to take you, with PBS, I just want to take you in here and show you a okay, so on your phone, you can Google search RMS road maps, The RAV map stands for Restricted Access Vehicle Maps /PDS. You can then reference that, and you can actually see what routes are available to you. There it is there. 2 seconds. Let's get a connection to the internet here. Go live. So when you pull the app on up on your phone, or if you've got a laptop and you want to look on a laptop, you can. That's what you get. You get a general warning disclaimer when you first pull the app up to start. So we're using this app. We're using this app now to reference where we can access and where we can't, if we've got a PBS type combination. So on that PBS approval documentation, it'll give you specific levels of operating mass. What we call PBS level 1, level 2A, and so on. So that's why it's important to have a read of that and see what the allowable masses are. So this here is this map over on the left-hand side. There's an index over here that we set up. So I've selected a PBS level 2A. So I'm talking about a vehicle typically that might work at 56, 57 tonne gross weight. And I can put in a location up here. So up the top here, there's a selection box. Daniel, have you got an idea? Pick a town or a road or something? Anything? Penrith, so Mulgoa Road, here we go. Right, so Mulgoa Road, Penrith, we put that in there, we'll just hit go. So this is using Google Maps. It's a Google Map overlay. So what you see when you pull that up, and you can see quite clearly there, maybe not at the back, Penrith there at the top. Anywhere green is okay, it's good to go at PBS level 2A. So once again, you're looking at your document, level 2A might say 57.5 tonne. Okay. So on that route there, that route is certified to operate at level 2A. Alright. So the main thing is, if you get, and the reason for showing you this tonight and to try and lift that understanding about PBS just a little bit, is that you might get situations where the nature of the work changes, the sites that you've got to access or tip off at. Under the PBS business rules, okay, if you haven't got straight access like you have there, like so if the site you've got to go to doesn't lay on one of those nominated roads, then you need a permit. You can obtain permits, or the other opportunity is you drop your weight back to that GML level and work that combination of GML mass only, because you might have to leave that route to get access to a site somewhere that's not on the PBS route, so to speak. So that's just a little bit about PBS. We were going to have a look at a bit of an approval document there and sort of see that in the flesh, I guess, and show you what that looked like.
Just a quick one, Julian. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
If on that route there,
Yep.
if you were doing a collection or a delivery to, say, a little side street just off the route,
yep.
you can't take a full PBS2 into that area?
No.
Even if it's only a couple of 100 metres?
No.
Okay, so you've got to have direct access onto the PBS route,
That's right.
otherwise it's not approved.
That's right. Now, getting an understanding of how the road network works, access is controlled by the road manager.
Sure.
So if it's a state road, it's managed by Transport for New South Wales. So they're the road manager. So any of our major routes fall into that category. Otherwise, if it happens to be Woodruff Street there in Penrith, that comes under the control of Penrith Council. So if you've got a tip site or an excavation or demolition site and you want to work at full capacity, you would then need a permit from Penrith Council to come out of Woodruff Street. That's basically how it works.
But council could approve a
Yeah.
PBS2 on
Yeah, and council council have come on board more and more with PBS because PBS has taken off. There's more and more combination types out there, as you're probably seeing on the road yourself, with more and more axles and groupings and things by design. The changes are quite significant in some cases. And what industry is looking for productivity.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's about getting that job done and getting it done quicker and more cost effectively. I'll just see if I've got a copy of an approval document here that I can show you. That might be a little bit scanned up the back there, you guys, at the door there. Okay, this is, I won't mention the company, but this document here is of one of your competitors that has a PBS combination. So, if you have a look up on the top left-hand corner there, understanding now how that PBS system works, it'll relate to what we're calling a number of units, truck 1, truck 2, truck 3. So, on the other pages that are part of that document, you would be looking to see those units nominated. They'd have serial numbers and they'd have the spec and design and the manufacturer and so on. So they're identified on the document, which I don't have there up in front of you. But typically then that's what you're looking at. It'll highlight level 1, it'll highlight level 2. So it's saying there GML, it's 50.5, and at GML level 2, it's 56 tonne. Alright? Yeah.
What does PBS stand?
Big pardon?
What does PBS stand?
PBS stands for Performance-Based Standards. That's what it stands for. Yeah. And it's in a specific category of its own, in that that vehicle by design is engineered to an engineering standard, and then an approval is given. So an approval is given for the vehicle to work at high mass limits, basically, and it will comply, because there's a 12-point criteria that the vehicle performance-wise has to make, from gradability and startability to cornering to turn axes and things like that. So when an operator wants to go to another level, comes up with another design of PBS type vehicle, they then, in that approval process, they might have to do a route assessment to know that that combination is going to work. Yep. All right, I just want to take an opportunity. Has anybody got any general questions they want to ask, even from a compliance angle, I guess, given that's probably my strong point? Anyone got any questions? Just want to throw up and have an answer? No?
What are the tolerances of the weighbridge?
Okay, tolerances of the weighbridge, that's a good question. If you're on one of the RMS weighbridges, so if you're on Marulan, you're on Mount White, you're on a certified weighbridge site, so it's what we call a Category 1 site. Okay, so your tolerances are at a minimal. So in other words, the measurement adjustment that we're going to give you is minimal. So typically on a steer axle, 250 kilograms, okay, off whatever the measured mass is on that axle. You're looking at, I think it's 400 kilograms on the drive and the gross weight. So if you're measured roadside, then that measurement adjustment is a little bit more. So typically on a steer axle it will be 300 kilograms. I think it's 400, 500 on the drive and so on. Yeah.
Oh, it's 300 on the steer.
Yeah.
500 on the
Yeah, no. If you're being measured roadside, you can do that, yeah. On a weighbridge. I'm pretty sure that it's less on the drive on a weighbridge. It's 400. Yeah. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, anyone wants to say anything? That's basically what I wanted to cover in chain of responsibility. I guess it's the point of doing the presentation, I guess, was just to bring to your attention that there's been some significant changes in the law, and everybody now is obligated under that law to make good of it, I guess, and to manage it as best they can from a day-to-day perspective in the operation. So, yeah, that's basically it. So thanks, Dorothy. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Julian, for your time for that presentation. Just a reminder before Daniel has a few words that please make sure that you have signed on to the sign-on sheet at the back. Please make sure you do that before you go after the dance events are over. Can I hand now over to Daniel who'd like to say a few words. Thanks.
Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for all the non-Mulgoa people. Appreciate it coming. Thanks to Jack and Julian. It was a good speech. Hope you took something in. I just wanted to just make a point of lost time injuries, and our last injury occurred on the 10th of November, and then half a day was lost, and since then the total hours worked on all our projects has reached 47,100 hours of no lost time injuries to report, which is very good, I think. But driving a truck is, I think it's just sitting in a cab, but I know all you blokes know it's draining, putting up with the traffic, and you've got to have patience for the drivers, and well done to that, because, you know, it's not easy, it's not just sitting on your ass. And the operators, you too, like looking out for people and people working around you and stuff like that, and, just well done. I haven't got too much negative to say. He's doing a good job. I just want to put it the way we work here, and to the operators, if you're out on a job and there's not a lot to do, make sure you get out and ask what to do, and if there's something left to do, do it, and keep busy. And the drivers, chatter on the radio, keep that to a minimum. The radio's a tool, it's not a social friggin' thing. So, it's very important on a job. There's a lot of other people trying to talk, and more reports, you've all been doing the right thing. So like I said, I'm not here to get up, you just keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing a good job, and you blokes out there doing a good job on the projects, that's how we get the next job and keep you blokes employed, and it all works together. And I suppose well done, everyone's doing a good job, and thank you for everything. Well done. Anyone's got any questions or wants to have a chat or wants to say something, whatever? Otherwise we can...
I'll have something to say,
right
Mr. Batey.
Yep.
You don't think I'll come and not say this?
Thanks, Steve.
Hello everybody. Look, some familiar faces in the audience. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Tim Orpin. I am the operations manager for Sydney Metro, for Western Sydney. So all of the Acciona projects that fall under Western Sydney, and some of the ones that have been hoping to win in the Sydney Metro fall under my footprint. And most of the people here that work, whether they're with the competition or with Acciona, CPB, etc., we've all crossed paths and probably worked across one another's projects for a number of years. But I guess I first of all want to say thank you, both to Tracy, Daniel, and Cynthia and so on, for putting this together. We hauled Daniel over the coals about 4 months ago for a number of incidents that Mulgoa had. And he stepped up, and his business has stepped up. Now, this is a small business that's come pretty good in the last few years, and it's not easily come good. It's through a lot of hard work and commitment from a lot of people, and that's most of the people in this audience here. And I can't stress enough, with the tier 1 organisations, where the workload is coming on in Sydney, and particularly Western Sydney, in the next 5, 6, 10 years, the importance of these kind of forums, and how I use an analogy that says it increases your share price. Now, the share price I'm talking about is not only the Mulgoa business, but it's about every single one of you here. You come work on an Acciona or a John Holland or a CPB or a joint venture, even if you throw in some of the European raiders, as I call them, Bouygues, Ferrovial, throw in a Korean there, Samsung, every now and again. It makes a huge difference, this kind of adjustment. Now, I know a lot of the stuff we've gone through here that we've had a look at tonight. COR is a minefield. And I learned a hell of a lot this evening myself. I know COR is a minefield, and I didn't know some of the stuff that goes on here. This whole PBS world is another world to me. I listened to Jack earlier talking about some of the things that have happened on TNR3, and there's one particular thing that resonates with me. Some of you have heard this before. When I first came across Daniel, 2009, I think it was 2010, on the M2 upgrade, I was the construction director on that job. I shared with that team, and I shared it again at North Connect when I was the project director there. I have been in the unfortunate position, in 30 years in the industry, or 31 years in the industry now, to have suffered 6 fatalities, either on my project or in the business that I've been working with. I've only worked for 4 companies in my entire life. Athiona or Lend-Lease Engineering is the 4th. I've been with them for just on 5 years. And the last fatality that some of you will recall, or most of you will recall, was Jimmy Adams on the North Connect project. He was the 6th. All 5 of the previous fatalities that I'd suffered on my patch or in the business that I was working for, not always on my project, but on a sister project, all 5 of those guys died by being reversed up. All 5. Jimmy Adams was the first one that died from a different type of fatality and injury with a pressurized vessel on North Connect. So I am particularly passionate, and so are our teams, whether it's Carl or Brandon or Nick from CPB and Steve, who I've worked with on 2 projects before, Western Australia and here. I am particularly passionate about watching out for and being aware of the surroundings like Jack was outlining. Reversing vehicles, heavy vehicles and light vehicles, but much more importantly heavy vehicles, are the single biggest risk all of us face every single day. And the importance of that awareness, and I don't care how you package it. I don't care whether you package it in terms of the compliance of the documentation, or it's in terms of exactly what Jack was talking about, the walk-around inspection. But rest assured, the next fatality that's going to happen in Western Sydney is going to be a reversing vehicle. And the point of emphasis is, we don't want it on this patch. Not in any of the people that are represented here by Mulgoa, or on any of our projects as Tier 1 businesses. We had a very, very close shave on TNR4 not so long ago. Georgia Ertech did that job. And I don't know if any of you recall, it had nothing to do with Mulgoa, but it was a reversing rubber duck, and a bloke got pinned between the reversing rubber duck and a light vehicle. And it was that close to being a fatality. Just want to share that with you. So the importance of these events, and coming here, whether it's once every 2 months or once every 3 months, when Daniel and Tracy try and get the whole team together, puts this organisation at a different threshold to your competition. And it does not go unnoticed by the Tier 1 market. So I think all of us need to stand and appreciate and put your hands together for this business you work for and the step change that they're trying to make. You know, and the representation you've got here of Tier 1 businesses. Don't underestimate that. The final point I'll say, and Daniel did touch on it when he was saying a few words earlier, and he's not the best because he comes with a truck himself, but he is a bloody good leader, I'll give him that. The one thing he said was, what happens if something goes down in their business? And by something going down, I'm talking about a fatality or something happens in this business. There's, I don't know what it is, Tracy, 108, 110, 120 people organised part of this team. What happens to all of you when this business shuts down? Whether it's beyond these two's control or something that one of you do, how many people's livelihood does that affect? And you sometimes wonder why us dickheads from these Tier 1 organisations take it so passionately. And now you know. You don't want to sit up there, you don't want to be the one phoning Dallas Adams and his mom when I'm telling them Jimmy Adams passed away 2.5 years ago. I made that call that day. You never want to go there. And that's what we're trying to do by raising the bar at these type of forums. So all I ask is that you keep giving this your commitment. It is serious stuff, guys. It really is serious stuff. And it matters. And it may only matter once in your life. But you never want that once to happen. So pay them their respect. I trust you're getting paid for your 2 hours that you had tonight. But it matters. And it separates you from the competition. CPB, Athiona, John Holland, whoever's out here in Western Sydney, will support this business. But you've got to take it seriously too. That's all I've got to say. Thanks, Trace.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thanks very much, Tim. That was a very appropriate way to end the forum tonight. Thanks again for everyone for giving your time and coming. We do appreciate it. There's a bit of leftover food. You're all happy to help yourselves, have another bite to eat. Make sure you have signed the sign-on sheet. Be safe. Tomorrow's Friday and then the weekend's here. And then we'll be back to work Monday as well. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for our guests and our guests. Really appreciate it.